how is it going? It's me, Betty Jean. In today's video, I wanted to share my personal favorite neutral palettes with a twist, neutral adjacent palettes, skirting the line of neutral, colorful, that kind of thing. It's not too often your girl dabbles in neutral makeup, but if I were going to, these are the palettes I'm going to reach for probably every time. I narrowed it down to 15 of my favorites. And to be fair, I really don't have very many neutral palettes anyways. A lot of these are gonna be kind of like on that line of like, is that neutral? Or does it just have neutrals? And kind of like my vision of what my neutral palettes are for me. Cause like even like what I'm wearing right now, like this like dusty pink beanie with the sweater and then this makeup, to me, this is all very neutral. Even though to you, it might be like, no, that's pink. Like, but to me, this is very like neutral pink. So my definition of neutral might be very different than yours. This is gonna be a video for maybe those of you who are like me and don't love neutrals, but you want to find a way to find enjoyment out of them and maybe just get my little opinion on what my favorites are. I feel like I have some good picks here, especially if you like grungier vibes. I am really excited to share these with you. I'm going to be doing swatches and everything, the whole 9 yards, so it's gonna be a feat, but I'm excited about it. Before we get into the video itself, I did of course film this look. It should already be up on my Instagram and YouTube shorts by the time this video goes up. And as far as my accessories today go, this is a CC brand beanie. This is an old wig off of Amazon, and my nail polish of the day is Apollo from Mooncat. So yeah, without further ado, let's just hop in and chat about these 15 neutral by my standards palettes. So we're gonna go in no particular order. I just kind of have them stacked like smallest to biggest so that they would not be precariously falling all over the place. So we're just gonna dive in. I'll have everything I can linked down below as well as any discount codes if I have any. Can't guarantee all of these are available. If anything, I'm certain some of these no longer exist, but they're still in my collection. They're still ones I deem to be favorites as far as the neutral category goes. And I'm gonna explain just why I like them, why I deem it to be neutral if it's questionable, and we're gonna have some fun. I have also done videos with every single one of these palettes, a lot of the times multiple looks across YouTube and Instagram, so you can go check my various platforms if you would like to see some inspo. First things first, fairly certain this doesn't exist, and I have such a bone to pick with this brand. You probably already know what's coming, but it's the Kidos Sashimi City palette. They have discontinued all of these. I wouldn't be surprised if none of them exist anymore. But it looks like this. It's beautiful. This is very much a kind of like pink neutral sort of situation, very much leaning on the neutral vibes, but with a very pinky undertone. The sparkly duochromes in here are so, so pretty. And I like this one because you really can kind of stay more with the like brown yellowy tone, or you can embrace a little bit more of the pinky side. I was so blown away with this one when I first used it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but it's beautiful. I think this came out back in like 2020. And I think this and the lavender one were the last futurism palettes they ever made, and they've since done away with them. And it's very, very heartbreaking because these were so, so good. I can't even wish they'll bring them back because we all know they won't, but your girl can dream. I really wish they would have continued this series. But this palette's really fun, especially if you're someone like me who doesn't necessarily love playing with neutrals all that often. This is kind of like, again, like neutrals with a twist, a little bit on that pinky realm, and I really, really enjoy it. Next up, moving on into more of traditional neutral palette territory. Next is gonna be my Mary Jane palette from Melt Cosmetics. This is a grungy, cool tone neutral lover's dream. This is absolutely stunning. If I'm gonna play with neutrals, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be cool tone neutrals. It's just my favorite thing in the world. I love cool tones on myself. It's just my absolute favorite. And especially if you also like kind of dingier, grungier vibes, this is the one for you. I personally love Melt Cosmetics. I love their formulas. I think their palettes are so much fun. They're beautiful. I love the way they're laid out. And this one is such a wonderful cool tone grungy vibe. I love these shimmers. They're very textured and weird and grimy, and I just love it. And these mattes are really great. We have a really good range from light to dark, but the shimmers are definitely the more prominent part of this palette, and I think it's just such a no-brainer way to do just very dingy, cool toned looks. It's really, really cool. You can do things that are a little bit lighter, more sparkly, or things that are really, really deep and just I'm gonna keep using words like grimy and dingy because that's just what I see with this palette, and I mean those words in such endearing ways. Definitely a go-to if I'm gonna play with like actual neutrals, like no question about it. There's no color in here. This is truly just a neutral palette and I love it so much. Next up, another melt palette I have. Actually, this is gonna be kind of on that realm of like half neutral, half colorful, but I can't not talk about the Gemini. It's still one of my favorite palettes in my whole collection. And I feel like this kind of brings together like neutral, colorful, neutrals with a twist, like to maybe someone who strictly only uses neutrals and never uses color. You might look at this and be like, Betty Jean, that's orange and green. But to me, this is very much like grungy, warm, like teddy bear kind of neutrals, like very warm, rusty colors. And then even though these are definitely green, I feel like when you use super like grungified, muted tones, like these olivey shades, it's like it's green, but it's neutral green. This is only gonna make sense if you share the same brain as me. But to me, this is neutral green. If I'm gonna do something kind of like, I want it to play along that neutral muted vibe, but I don't want it to be neutral, this is what I'm gonna grab. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorites. It's been one of my favorites for years and years and years. This was my first melt palette ever. It was a gift and I'm still so grateful for this. It unlocked my love for melt cosmetics and I'm so happy about this. It's just such a staple. This is such an amazing black eyeshadow, such a classic, and I don't think I'm ever gonna get sick of it. I actually used this recently in like a full face using my oldest makeup because this is definitely one of my oldest palettes. And it's just still so fun. I enjoy it a lot. Next up, going back into more classic neutral territory, two of my favorite neutral palettes of all time are actually from Colourpop. First being that's Tote. This is one of the ones that like I did not expect to love as much as I do, but it's such a classic, beautiful, cool tone neutral palette. It was done so well. I feel like the range of mattes like goes perfectly from light to deep. Like you can do, again, just anything on that light to dark realm. The shimmers are all so perfect. We have a beautiful, shifty, wet looking Super Shock in here. It's just such a classic, no-brainer, cool tone neutral palette and I just love it. I feel so pretty when I wear this. Like if I want just like very classic glam neutral, this is what I'm gonna grab probably every time. It's easy, it's foolproof. I feel like there's so much I can do with this. I can go really dramatic and glam. I can go very simple and subdued. And even though, again, I don't reach for just like basic neutral looks very often, this is one that I found myself reaching for over the years when I do want that particular energy in my makeup that day. And also from Colourpop is the Quartz palette. This one is more leaning on the like grayish neutrals, like still cool toned, but instead of it just being classic cool tone neutrals, it's more of like gray leaning cool tone neutrals. Very grayish, very pretty. This one, if you like borderline gray makeup, but you don't want it to be gray, this is the one for you. Again, we have a really good range of light to dark. Again, all these shimmers in here I feel like can complement the various things you want to do really well. You can, again, do things that are very light and sparkly and easy and very like no makeup, but you can also be really dark and dramatic. This one I feel like can even lean quite a bit grungier just because of that like gray base to it. It's really, really pretty. I wasn't sure if I'd even like this one as much just because I already had the That's Taupe, but then as I played with it, I was like, oh no, this is such a different vibe than That's Taupe. Like they're in the same family as far as cool tones go, but this one is very much like gray heavy, grayish leaning, different energy completely. Next up, if you are someone who likes a mixed metals kind of vibe, this is gonna be your best friend. This is the Fighter palette from Fantasy Cosmetica. This was kind of like their first take at doing something more neutral, and I think they did such a good job with it, especially again coming from me, someone who doesn't play with neutrals very often. I think this was such a fun, creative way to do it because it's very much like mixed metals kind of energy. Like we kind of have different realms here. Like we can play with more like earthy, brownish golds into like a rose gold even, into very much a like gray, silver, gunmetal-y kind of situation. You can kind of play with these all separately. You can mix and match them all together. It's really fun. The metallic shimmers in here are so incredibly metallic. I think especially because it has very much that like true like gem, rock, metal kind of vibe. It really enhances that metallic nature. It's so pretty. You can do so much with this. Again, you can play with the warmth, the cool, mix them all together. I've had a lot of fun with this one, and I was actually surprised I liked it as much as I did, just because, again, broken record. Don't play with neutrals too often, but this was a very creative way to do it, and I was really, really impressed with it. Okay, next up. This is one of the ones that I feel like people are gonna disagree with me for even putting in this video. Just because, like, when you look at it, it's not really like screaming neutrals, but to me, and what I want in my makeup, this is so dingy, grungy, muted kind of vibes that I consider this like neutral adjacent. It's like neutral colorful, in my personal opinion. It's the Stone and Rock from Odensai. This is very much a like swampy witch energy kind of palette. I believe this was my favorite release they had last year, aside from my own personal collab with the brand. But it's green. It's very much a green palette, but again, it's like green neutral adjacent. And we do have some true neutrals in here. Like we have a brown, we have black, we have the black shimmer, we have like a few brownie shades here. These three here, I feel like are such dingy greens that they're like neutral green. Like I mentioned before with the Melt Gemini, very much neutral green. We have like the whites. These ones up here, definitely splashes of color, but I feel like all together and when you play with this, it's very much like colorful neutral. It's colors, but toned down in a more neutral way. I feel like stuff like this is really, really great if you're someone who's scared of color and you're very comfortable with neutrals. This would be a great thing to kind of inch your way in because you get these splashes of color, but done in such a toned down, muted way that you don't feel like you're wearing rainbow eyeshadow. It still feels a little bit more in your neutral comfort zone, but playing around with little splashes of color here and there. I think this is so fun. One of my absolute favorite palettes in this whole lineup. It is such a gorgeous one. I'm such a sucker for grungy greens. Next up, another one that's very much a like half and half grungy, colorful neutrals. The Sorceress Smoke from Unearthly. This is my current favorite palette from the brand. I think they did such a good job with this. I rated it very highly in my 2023 palette ranking. And it's just gorgeous. And again, at first glance, you might be like, that's not neutral. But to me, it very much is. These three here are without question neutrals, like they are brown. This orange, I feel like, is so muted and grungified that it's like neutral orange. Even these like bluey purpley shades are so like dark and grimy, like they're almost neutrals. This pink is very much neutral pink to me, like similar to what I have today, like neutral pink. And then we have the greens here, again. Like I've said for a couple palettes now, neutral green. If green could be a neutral, it's this grungy, grimy vibe. I love this palette. I feel like this is a really great way to do things that are really special and glamorous because these shimmers are so incredibly sparkly and special. But you can also do things that are very like bold and grungy and weird. Like you can kind of play with the neutral vibes, but you can also dive into like the splashes of color that are in here. You can mix and match everything together and very much get like a more muted, colorful kind of thing. It's such a beautiful palette. And this is actually one of the first palettes I thought of when I was planning this video. I was like, that might not be universally agreed upon as like in the neutral with a twist category, but to me it very much is. It's not full on colorful, it's very much neutrals with a twist, neutral colorful. Next up, diving into another one that is definitely more leaning on the neutral vibes, but it has a couple splashes of color. I love this one. I love this one so much. It's the Cold Moon palette from Ensley Rain. This one is so freaking beautiful. I knew I was gonna like this just from the brand teasing it because I was like, there's gonna be cool tones in here. I love that, whether it be cool tone neutrals or cool tone colors, everything about it's gonna be for me. And I was right. Here's what she looks like. Very much lots of cool tone neutrals with little subtle splashes of color. This one, again, this is gonna be great for someone who's maybe a little bit scared of color and you like cool tone neutrals. You can do every cool tone look under the sun, but then just dabble in a couple like special shimmers that have just like a really pretty flip to them. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but this is beautiful. You can do such lovely, glamorous looks. You can do sparkly, beautiful things. I love this one. I like that we have kind of different undertones for these cool tones as well. Like we have the very gray Giro, we have the classic cool tone neutrals, and then we have ones that are leaning more on that like pinky neutral adjacent, and it's just beautiful. I've had such a blast playing with this one. I feel like it's very wintertime appropriate as well, because I mean, I love cool tones year round, but I love cool tones in the winter. It's so fitting, you know? And this one makes me really, really happy. All right, next step. Definitely a half neutral, half colorful here. Like, no question about it. Half the palette's neutral, half the palette's colorful, but I love everything about it. It's the Siren Sunset from Lunar Beauty. They did such a good job with this. I love seeing kind of a mermaidy themed palette that leaned more into cool tones, especially with the neutrals. I feel like anytime I see a beachy or mermaidy themed palette that's half neutral, half colorful, it's always very warm neutrals with then the like teals and purples and stuff. But they leaned into the cool tone neutrals with these pops of color. So basically everything on the top row and this side here is gonna be your neutral, and then we have all these splashes of color. It is so beautiful. It's so well done. I love this one. I feel like, again, this is gonna be great if you're scared of color, because you can do things that are very neutral and in your comfort zone, but then add the splashes of color. Or even if you're like me and you don't play with neutrals often, it's still gonna be so much fun to play with, because there's just so much mixing and matching you can do. I just appreciate so much that this leans so cool tone. It makes me really, really happy. I think this one was beautiful. The formulas are amazing. All these different duochromes that are in here are so special on the lid. This is such a fantastic release. I was so, so happy with it. Next up, going into more of, again, like a neutral adjacent, colorful neutral kind of vibe. This is the Nomad Safari palette. This one very much is like colorful, but neutral colorful. It's so, so pretty. I like that we have a good mixture in here too. Like, we have kind of like this burnt orangey neutral-ish row. We have the weird, again, I'm gonna say it, neutral green row. They're greens, but they're neutral greens. And then we have kind of these like gray leaning, grayish, weird tones. Lots of mixing and matching you can do here. I like that you can kind of stick with the warmth or the cool, mix it all together. The shimmers in here are really cool. I love all the different like animal textures and the different shadows. It's really, really pretty. Nomad is super beginner friendly as well. I feel like their mattes blend so, so easy. They're very buildable, very easy to work with, and their shimmers are really, really pretty on the lids. And I really like how this one's laid out, because we have like, I mean, obviously I mentioned the color like in the different rows here, but in the columns, like we have matte, shimmer, matte. Like, it's really easy to kind of eyeball and pick out different looks here. Like, you can really look at everything in like little quads. So, so easy, super beautiful. I've really enjoyed this one as well. And another one from Nomad is going to be my Ghost Town USA. This was their spooky palette from last year. Love this cool lenticular packaging. This one is very much a kind of like half neutral, half colorful neutral adjacent. Like, we have all these neutrals on this side, and then as we go out to the other half, we have very much the like dusty blues, the dusty greens, the dusty purpley shade down here. Like, everything's a little bit more dingy, a little more toned down, a little more neutral for being colors. And it's beautiful. I really, really like this palette. I think they did such a good job with it. I just love the way everything is laid out. Again, we have all the different shimmer and matte columns. It's just beautiful. So much fun. You can, again, do things that are really soft and toned down, but you can also do things that are like really dark and smoky and bold. It's just such a fun palette to play with. I'm super excited about all the other Halloween palettes they have to come over the coming years, because they did the Haunted Europe 2 years ago, and then this was last year's, and I'm so excited to see what this year's is gonna be. Nomad does a really good job, I feel like, just in general, of doing really fun, bold things, but doing it in such an approachable way, in my personal opinion. Next up, Blend Bunny has two palettes that I deem to be kind of like neutrals with a twist. First being the All Done Up palette. This one is so, so cool. I think this is one of their smallest palettes also, actually, but it's really, really cool. Very much neutrals with a twist. Like, we have colors in here, but they're toned down. Again, they're kind of grimier, a little bit grungier. And Blend Bunny does this thing where they just make everything so foolproof most of the time. Not every palette is laid out the exact same way, but a lot of the time they have like the pastels, the mids, the deeps, and then the shimmers in here are so spectacular. They're so sparkly and beautiful and wonderful. I've just loved seeing their shimmers get better and better over time. It's been so great to see. This one is so, so beautiful. I love that It's like neutral, but the colors they have are very much colors that appeal to me. Like we have kind of the mustard row, the weird greens, the weird like bluish gray colors. Even this like cool tone row over here makes me really happy. This grungy, rusty vibe. It is such a beautiful palette. Blend Bunny's formulas are absolutely incredible as well. They're so easy to work with. I feel like they blend like freaking butter, and this is one of their neutral with a twist palettes that I love with my whole heart. And the other one is my very grimy, very used, the Dollhouse palette. This is one of the first palettes they did actually. I think it's like maybe their 4th palette they came out with, something like that, but it looks like this. I always call this my grungy garden palette, and I stand by that. It's very much, again, like neutral leaning, neutral adjacent. We have, again, that gradient of like pastel, mid, deep. We have different levels of neutral here. Like we have kind of an orangey row. We have kind of a mauve purple into like a grayish, into like a, I don't even know what to call this. I guess just more cool tone neutrals, but still a little bit mauve. We have the pinks. We have the neutral greens, the olivey stuff. The shimmers in here are super pretty as well. Overall, this is a really gorgeous one. I've taken this one traveling with me just because I feel so pretty when I wear it. Again, I get kind of the best of both worlds. If I wanted to do something a little more neutral leaning and kind of glamorous, I can, but I can also really just stick to the colors in here and do something really colorful, but it's still gonna be a little bit more muted and grungy, and it's everything that I love. It's such a gorgeous palette. And last but not least is the big boy. This one is absolutely ginormous. It doesn't really have business being as large as it is, but they did it so well. And I've used this for multiple occasions, and I'm happy every time. This is the Smoky Glam from Bella Beauty Bar. Very reflective packaging. I'm sorry for blinding you. But it looks like this. We have approximately 1 million shades in this palette. It's basically a table. It's very large, but it is done so well. Like the way everything is laid out, we have such a good range of light to deep, and every row is going to offer something different. Like we have kind of the warmer row here, then we have kind of the pinky neutrals into like almost like pinky neutral into fuchsia. Like we have a couple pops of real color in here too, into like a plummy mauve row, into a grayish row, into just a straight up gray row. You have so much to play with in here, things ranging from warm to cool. You can do things that are really colorful, really glamorous. One of my favorite memories about this palette is when I was filming my 2 looks video for this. My first look I filmed that morning before a bridal shower, and then that evening I did my makeup with it again for emo night. So you can do such different spectrums with this palette. The mattes are so beautiful, so buttery, and the shimmers are outstanding. They are so shiny and glitzy and wonderful, and I just absolutely love this palette. It is huge, but there's really not anything I would take away from this because there aren't really repetitive shades in here. Everything offers like a different undertone or a different level of depth. And I'm usually someone who does not like a palette this large, but they managed to do a great job with it. And I love it. This is a great kind of all-encompassing neutrals palette with a twist. So that is my video talking about my 15 favorite kind of neutral-ish palettes. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure there's some other things in my collection that you could consider neutrals with a twist, but I really wanted to try to narrow it down to like 15 of my favorites. But I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you have any of these? Do you want any of these? Is your definition of neutral similar to mine, or are you strictly like neutral is brown? I would love to hear your thoughts down below. And also, what are your favorite neutral palettes? Whether it's like true neutrals, neutrals with a twist, colorful neutral, what are your favorites? Leave them down below. If you made it to the end of this video, why don't you leave some neutral colored emojis? And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps my channel out a lot. And if you're not already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm battybean there as well. You can also subscribe. I'm posting most days over here. Also, you can join my channel memberships. The link to sign up will be down below. You'll get fun little perks, including a members only video once a month. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.